What an absolute beauty. Wow. Mint condition. This is a Philco 48-1001, code 122. And just look at the elegant, beautiful styling here. Philco model 48-1001, and the cabinetry is just absolutely in prime condition. This such a well cared for set. This is hopefully going to be subject of a resurrection. Hopefully we can resurrect this set. Let's take a nice comprehensive look at the inside of this set. Amazingly, the speaker still has a cone in it. Philco model 48 come on, focus, 48-1001, code 122, and there's a picture of it with the tube layout. This is interesting. This is a extra large interlock. It actually looks polarized. This is the antenna connector right here. High voltage stuff inside there. This uses a 10 BP4 CRT. It has something here called a beam bender. I am not familiar with a beam bender. I don't know what it does. We will certainly find out. Power transformer, huge. It's like a 400 watt, 450 watt transformer. Here's the choke. Here's the audio output. We have several filter capacitors. The goal here is just to do the absolute minimum to get it to play again so that I can move it on down the line and get my kind of crappy workbench back, because this thing has been hoarding my workbench. Wow, that tuner is just in mint condition. Look at that. The thing is frozen solid. Absolutely frozen solid. Uses a lot of Loctile tubes. I'm going to try and tip it up and we'll take a look at the underside. Holy crap, what an absolute cluster nightmare of junk parts. Leaky capacitors, bumblebees, black beauties. I don't even know what these are. If these are paper, if those things are paper, This is going to be an absolute nightmare full of leaky capacitors, especially with as damp as this chassis has been. Wow, this is going to be the ultimate resurrection right here. This is absolutely the worst I've ever looked at. And like I said, that tuner is just frozen solid, so we're probably going to end up having to go in with a composite video signal and just bypass the whole IF, because this uses the old low frequency split IF and sound. Yeah, let's see if we even have a mild chance here. And unfortunately, this socket does not fit all the way on this, because this has 2 pins on the bottom and it's only drilled for 1 pin. It's lighting up nicely inside. Oh, look at that. Keep in mind, this thing's been asleep for many, many years. And it just went right up. Yeah, that's this. See, this is only drilled 1 hole and there's 2 pins down here, so you gotta kind of just set it on here and hope it makes contact. Come on, stay. Stay. Good pixie tube. I'm gonna go down to 5 volts here. Wow, we have got a healthy 10 BP4 here. 5 volts. Good emissions at 5 volts. We have a healthy picture tube. Wow, that's a good start. That's a very good start. Here's the schematic. And what's nice about this is they have it sectioned off. If you see this section here, this section here, this section here, section at the top, this section over here. And this makes it nice because this is exactly how I resurrect a set. This right here is the power supply. Power supply. So this is the first thing we need to get working. This right here is the sweep circuits. So this is your horizontal and high voltage. This is your vertical deflection. This is the second thing we need to get working. This over here is the tuner. RF, they're calling it RF tuner. Well, we know looking at that the odds are that's not going to work. Probably not. Now, the video IF on this set is 26.6 megahertz and the sound is 22.1. Usually what I would do if I could not get the tuner to work is I would drive straight into the IF with the signal, but the older sets used this 26.6 and the newer sets used 45. Well, I only have equipment for 45, so it's going to be difficult for me to drive into the IF. I might have to end up eliminating all of this and just driving video and audio into the amp, like composite video and composite audio into the amp, just straight regular audio. But we have to start with getting this to work and getting this to work. If this section down here is dead, or if there's a hard problem like the power transformer right here, which as you can see how great a condition this one is in. Choke, filter, capacitors, that's all no big deal. But the hard parts like the CRT, of course, which checked good, the power transformer, the flyback high voltage transformer, those are things that can really just screw it up. And this has some other transformers in it, smaller, like vertical blocking transformer. Is this a horizontal blocking transformer, or is that the oscillator coil? So the next step will be, I don't think this is any good, and one of the 5U4s is missing. It uses two 5U4s. You can look at the circuit here that they're using. They're using a center tap transformer with a 5U4, basically the two diodes in parallel, so they're using one whole tube as one rectifier. Like, this thing is a major current hog kind of thing. So, and then we also have over here, we have the focus coil and the beam bender coil, which stand the ground off and give us 12 volt bias voltage. So the ground is not, the negative, the center tap of the transformer is not directly connected to the chassis. It goes through a couple coils which elevate the actual ground voltage up, and I'm sure that's used to bias some of these tubes. These old sets were very complicated. They really had not refined the circuits down. So the next step will be to probably gut this out and put two solid state 5U4s in here that I make in order to bring it up on a variac and a light bulb, and see if the power transformer is any good, or if it's going to go up in smoke because it's all corroded and the coils are all corroded and rusty. I'm going to make another one of these. This is just a solid state 5U4 using a couple 1N 4007 diodes. I guess I'll pull this apart since it's pretty much broken anyway, and then we'll test the capacitors in this beauty before we power it up, and then we'll start to bring it up on a dim bulb. I thought I would test this before I malleolated it, and you can see the short light is on and there's no emissions, and there's, if you just do leakage, it's full leakage. And I started looking at the tube and you can see it looks like it got popped right there above the filament. Looks like it was used as a fuse, overheated and blown apart. Actually, if you look at this thing, the filament, see the filament is all blown apart. See that right there, those white strips? That's the filament. And if you look down in there, you'll see the filament is laying against the plate. That's where the short comes from. So this tube was fused. These 5U4s, they act as a fuse if something should short in the circuit, and this one acted as a fuse. This looks like a really old version of this. I don't know what the date code is. 335 1885. I don't think it's 1935. Got our diodes in there ready to be soldered, but if you look at this base and you look at this more modern base, you can see this is much older than whatever this one was. So this gives us a little bit of insight that someone might have plugged this in at one time with a short in the power supply, so we might have more to deal with. Spider. I see in the past somebody replaced part of this can dome with these two resistors. I'm going to just kind of test the capacitors here with the ESR meter before we even put power to this. I'm assuming they're all discharged since it's probably been sitting for 50 years. Okay, there's something on that one. I'm just going around these ledics right here. There's something on that one. Something on that one. Okay, moving to the other one. That one is kind of dead. 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 Interesting that this one, they all measure, let me try something here. Is that better? This one they all measure 30 ohms. This one they all measure 2 ohms. That's kind of interesting. This one I think is isolated from the chassis. Okay, we got another one right. Where did it go? Right there is another one. Right here. These three. And let's see what those measure. That one measures 1 ohm, which is probably almost 0 because that one measures 1 ohm. That one measures 1.25 ohms. See, I have this thing connected with this cheesy clip lead, and this ESR meter actually, you know, I'm going straight across the clip lead and we're at a 0.5 ohm. So the clip lead is a 0.5 ohm. Always be careful with your cheap, crappy clip leads. I think there's one more ledic. Hold on. Okay, there's one right here. God, is that blown out? It's right here. Let's check that one. This pin is good, this pin is good, and this pin is good. Wow, interesting. So the only one that measures open or pretty much completely dead is this one. Let's measure this one, which means we need to move this over to here, I believe. This is isolated from the chassis. Let's see what we got on this one. Well, if I'm measuring this right, it's completely one section is completely dead. There's one section, there's the other section. So we've definitely appears we've got some dead ledics in here. Let me look closer. This is a nightmare. This set is just a nightmare. I'm going to assume that all of these are paper. These black square ones. We know these are paper. These Bumblebee Black Beauty Guitar Lover Specials. Wow, there's $500 worth of those in here. Put those. Oh, look, a flexome. That's a flexome. Asbestos infused. Look at this one here. It's done split in half. Well, we're going to find out what's inside of one of these right now. 004. Okay, so unfortunately, this is a paper capacitor, and you can see how they made this. Instead of a coil or a roll of paper and foil, they have it stacked in here. It's layers of paper and foil. So with the moisture, these things like to turn into resistors. And I love how they have it crimped on the end. They have like a folded over piece of metal, and they have the layers crimped. But yeah, this is definitely a paper capacitor. Don't be fooled thinking it's a mica. It's not. It's some kind of Philco crappy paper setup. And there are a lot of these in here. I think I counted 20 at least of these. Although there are a ton of these, and like 20 or more, they all are the same value, which is 0.004 at 600 volts. So I guess I could just buy a bag of 0047 disc capacitors and just cut them out and just J-hook them in, or just tack them in for the resurrection. I don't know, I just worry that they're going to start to short, because they'll be leaky and then they'll just go to 0 ohms. Yeah, paper capacitors have got to go. And so do the electrolytics and these bumblebee things. Like, there's no capacitors in this set except maybe some of these postage stamp domino ones that are even redeemable. Every capacitor in this is garbage. All of them. This would be a total recap. Except maybe the micas. And if you were going to use this long term, I would probably even change those. But let's power it through a light bulb and see what we get. No rectifiers to start. Both rectifiers are out. We'll start with a 68 watt bulb. I'm sure at least the power switch kind of works. Let me go up here and try that. I think it's this one. Hey, the power switch works. Got to have a suicide cord here to connect onto that. Let me get a meter. I don't know how many watts the filaments are, but I would imagine they're probably 100, 150. There's a lot of tubes in this thing. A lot of tubes. We got 56 volts there with the 68 watt bulb. So that's just filaments. Just filaments. What I might do is I might take this up to a 500. Leave the rectifiers out and see if any of the tubes are not getting warm. Right, this is a 500. At least I believe it's a 500. Its average life is 6 hours. Boy, what a long-lived bulb that is. So okay, with that one we get 116 volts going into the set. That's filaments only. The rectifiers are still out. Let's see if we can see any. Oh yeah, we're glowing. So I'll let that run for a minute or so and see if the transformer decides to expire. I've seen these things when they're in this condition. They work for sometimes forever, sometimes for 5 minutes, sometimes for a half an hour, and then they short and go up in smoke. Boy, this thing is crusty and rusty and corrody doodle. What I think I'm going to do next is take this back to 68 watt and put our rectifiers in. Or put our rectifiers in and then take it to a 68 watt. We had 56 volts there with just the 68 watt and the filaments only. Both rectifiers are in. 68 watt. Here we go. We got 23 volts and climbing. Remember, we had 56 volts with just the filaments. So I'm going to let this sit for a while. I can't tell if that's capacitors reforming or filaments warming up, so we'll just let it sit. I guess I could measure the B+. Measuring B+, we have 86 volts and sort of steady. Man, it's climbing a little bit. You know, just impressed at this capacitor here. This is the one that was so this one all the sections were less than 30 ohms or more than 30 ohms. This one they were all 2 ohms. This one section was open. This thing looks like it's actually like corroded all the way through. It's had a hole corroded through the case. I'm going to let this reform for a little bit. We'll see if any of these get warm. Look at that one back there. Look at how corroded that one is. This is definitely a new level of resurrection for me. I pulled the horizontal output tube out. I went up to a 150 watt bulb. I'm at 163 volts on the B+, and this capacitor right here, the one that measured open, is getting warm, so maybe it's reforming. All the other ones are cool, but that one, yeah, it's getting warm. That's interesting. It was open, measured open. That's ESR. We don't know about, you know, if it was leaky or shorted, but it's getting warm. So I'm going to let this cook for a while with the horizontal output out. And the voltage is still creeping up. We're at 164 volts right now. Should see what we're at AC. Let's see what the AC is. The AC, wow, 102 volts, 103 volts AC. That's a severe lack of filtering. Severe lack of filtering. For more than a third of the voltage to be AC on a full wave rectifier setup. The 6BG6 tests okay. No leakage, no shorts. It's a horizontal output tube. The 5V4 rectifier tests good. No leakage, no shorts. Not rectifier, I'm sorry, damper tube. This is the damper. The 5V4 damper tube tests good on both sections. No leakage, no shorts. Wow, even the 1B3 high voltage rectifier measures okay. And these always seem to be leaky and have gone to air on these sets that have been moist. moist. I went up to a 200-watt light bulb, and it's been sitting here for a couple hours. Our B plus is 244 DC right on the rectifier, and I'm not getting any hum or noise from the speaker at all. It's totally quiet. I'm not getting any vertical noise, nothing. It just is quiet. So the capacitor is still a little warm, not hot like it was, so it's reformed, whatever that means. Means it should be replaced, really. I'm going to let this thing sit and cool down for several hours, and then we'll come back and see if we could get the horizontal to fire up, high voltage to fire up. I found those capacitors. I can order a lot of 100 4700 picofarad film capacitors for like 15 bucks. So they're 15 cents a piece for to replace the paper ones under there that are all cracked. But before I do that, I want to sort of make sure this thing has any kind of shot. Is the yoke open? Is the flyback open? Is something else open? I would really think I should be hearing hum. Alright, we'll let it sit. We'll come back to it later. Kind of the third most important hurdle is the high voltage. Number one would be, is the CRT any good? Number two is the power transformer, power supply. And number three is the flyback and horizontal circuit. So if I can get that to work, I should be able to get a raster of some kind, if not just a straight line. And that horizontal includes the flyback, the yoke, any other little transformers, the horizontal oscillator, horizontal output. So I've connected a plate. I've left the plate cap off the horizontal output tube, and I've spliced a milliamp meter in there, so I'm going to give it some power here. And I'm still on the 200-watt light bulb, and we're going to see what kind of plate current we get. Now if this is working right, we should see this come up, and as it comes up, it'll drop. It'll come up, and then it'll drop like 30 or 40 milliamps, and then it'll continue to climb and stabilize, and that drop is where the horizontal oscillator starts. So I would expect some movement by now. We are on a 200-watt light bulb. I give it a minute here and let the airplane go by. So after about 2 minutes, still nothing. Let me grab a sacrificial meter, and we'll see if we're getting any voltage here. Alright, we should be able to sacrifice this. What is this? A ME297U. And I'm on 500 volts here, DC, 500 volts. Let's see what we got here. Because even if the oscillator is not running, if we got voltage on that plate, see, we need voltage on that plate, and we need voltage on the screen, and that tube should conduct. Overconduct if the oscillator is not running. And the reason why I'm using a sacrificial meter is because if there were pulses here, it'll destroy the meter. It'll be like 6,000 volt AC pulses. So I'm just going to go straight to the plate. And wow, we have, what, 240 volts there? No, 280. Well, hold on. Need to relearn how to read my analog meter again. So that would be 200, that would be 300, so it'd be 220 volts. So we have 220 volts on the plate of the horizontal output. Why is there no cathode current? Well, either this filament is not lit, it has a cathode fuse which is blown open, or it has no screen voltage. You can't really see the it's cold. It's no heat here at all. Bad socket. I don't know, let me finger it for a minute. Okay, just got it. I've been screwing with it in the socket. And of course our light bulb has gotten a lot brighter now. I think I'm going to go up to the 500 watt light bulb. But yeah, I think this socket is... It's still lit now. I can see it there. I don't want to ride this thing raw at any point. Even if I have to go up to a 1,000 watt bulb, I don't want to ride this thing raw. That'll be the best way if something shorts, to just cremate the power transformer instantly. With those solid state diodes in there, it wouldn't stand a chance. It'd either blow the circuit breaker in the house, or it would cremate the transformer. It appears there actually is some high voltage here. Don't try this at home, kids. Maybe 1,000 volts. That doorknob capacitor is the same as the back of the CRT. Actually, we have 2,000 volts there. So I'm going to go up to a 500 here, and we will see what we get. I said this is an element of risk here. The goal with this video is to try and actually get this thing to produce a picture. Oh. What happened there? It started to work, and then it dropped. That was weird. It made like an arcing sound, and then it dropped. But our current is lower than before. Our current is lower, our high voltage is higher. That is very odd. I think they want 16 kilovolts here. Let me just do this for a second. I'm going to bareback it. I'm going to push a switch here. That's straight line voltage. It was weird. It started to make a noise as it came up, and it sounded healthy, and then it dropped back. And it looks like we actually have a little flicker from the screen when I rotate this. God, that is frozen. You smell the cabinet rotting away. I'm measuring the B plus again, and I have 253 volts there. And I should have, according to the schematic, 350. And that's 350 with tube rectifiers, not solid state. With solid state, it should probably be 400. So I'm going to try, what do I got here? This is a 100 at 450. Let's just... Oh boy, does that make a big difference. It goes right up to 292. The high voltage didn't change much. But what's interesting is the light bulb sure gets a lot brighter. I'm going to pull the capacitor out. Look at that. Why would a capacitor? Well, it makes the B plus go up, so the current draw increases. Okay, that might work. You need your capacitors. You need your filter capacitors. So interesting. I'm looking for good high voltage here. I'm really and it doesn't appear that anything is shorted. Okay, with that capacitor, I lose my... Let me pull this out. Yeah, why do I get light on the screen without the capacitor, but not with? Let's take a quick peek at the sound issue, why there's no buzz or anything. The speaker is measuring 4.1 ohms, 4.5 ohms. Let me go, that is a permanent magnet speaker. Let me go to diode check here. Wow, there's no crackle or anything. That's kind of odd. Let me get a 9-volt battery. So listen to this. I mean, barely anything. That thing should be popping in and out, making a bunch of noise. Like, that speaker is turco-croculated. Like the voice coil fell off of the paper. Oh, I see, it's frozen. It's frozen solid. I think I just put a hole in it. Oh man, did I ruin that beauty? Here's what I would expect from a 9-volt battery. So that speaker is... I can't believe that speaker in such a cared for set, such a temperature controlled, humidity controlled environment set, why the speaker would go bad. Even with this speaker, it's still totally silent, and with the amount of filter hum I know this thing has, that speaker should be vibrating right off the table. And this is the power output tube, just nothing. Let me see, what is that? That is a 7B5. Geez, getting hot. Is the audio output transformer open? Okay, I got a little activity out of it. I had a bad Chinese clip lead. I'm gonna scratch the volume control here. Very weak. This set is very sick. This is one sick telly. I have a bunch of 100 microfarad 450 volt capacitors, and we've used these in resurrections before. Most of the capacitors in this set are between 22 and 40 microfarad in the filtering section, so the hundreds will be just fine. I am going to remove everything, tip the set up on its face, and ground the yellow cathode wire and see if we get the vertical line across the front. The vertical line flashes when I turn, I think, the brightness control, which could be a bad brightness control, but I can kind of prove that by grounding the yellow wire. That'll just turn the CRT on all the way. Wow, so I see this is where your horizontal hold and vertical hold and all those controls are here, and this little piece of wood used to be a flip down. See the hinge right there? There's a hinge there. This is the front of the TV. It's saying face down. There's a hinge there and a hinge here. Check out the mold. And so this little piece of wood right here used to flip down and reveal these controls. Well, no more. I wonder, so this is focus. Interesting. Anyway, we want to find the yellow wire, this yellow wire right here. We want to clip onto that, and if we ground that, it should be the same as turning the brightness all the way up. So I have 144 volts on the yellow wire, and when I turn the brightness control, God, this is going to be a shaky video. I believe this is brightness. 144 all the way up. 146. It's weird. It doesn't change it much. And I don't see the screen flickering anymore. So what happens if we just short this? This will just turn it all the way on. Which it just is a flash, which kind of suggests that there's not enough high voltage, which we know. Okay. Oh, this right here was the door I was talking about that dropped down. This piece of wood. This piece of wood right here was hinged. And there are controls back behind this. So background right there is the brightness control, and it goes straight to the cathode if you follow it. And I almost wonder if this capacitor, this 0.5 microfarad right there, is shorted, because that would put 270 volts, and that pot would not be able to pull that voltage down. It would all be dropped across that 100K right there. R344. So if that capacitor was... So that right there is that half a microfarad capacitor, and the 100K resistor is right up here, right there. And I have it directly grounded right now, and I have 79 volts there. I should have 0 on that capacitor. So the capacitor is very leaky, and the brightness control is bad. Imagine that. Okay, if I ground the brightness control center tap, that's what I get, which puts 72 volts on the cathode. So it's just the high voltage can't drive any more than that right now, since I only got 5K. But there you go, we got our first light. No vertical deflection. So this right here is a vertical output transformer, and I checked it and it's not open, and it does not have a pulse going to it. So I do not believe that the lack of vertical deflection is the transformer or the yoke. I believe those are probably good. I'm starting to think the ticket here with this is going to be a long resurrection. To pull the face and the CRT off, as hard as that might be, and just strip it down to the bare chassis, which if it was not all rusty and corroded would be a 5-minute thing, and then take a hypodermic needle with automatic transmission fluid and inject it into the pots and the tuner, and try and get that stuff freed up. And then once they've soaked in ATF for a day or two, then check all the pots with an ohm meter and see if they're good. If they are, then move forward. This is going to be a tough one. And then go through and retest the electrolytics. Just parallel the 100 at 450 volt ones in on top of the old ones. Not saying it's the appropriate way to do it, but the pots are going to be an issue. The pots and capacitors and tube sockets are going to be an issue with this. That's just water damage. And of course all these Black Beauty bumblebee square paper thingies. So I think that might be the next step, is to try and pull the face off of this. This meaning this piece of wood right here. And then start these pots soaking and hope that we can save them. I think ATF would probably be about the best choice. WD-40 is basically just a lot of kerosene, and although that works, it doesn't quite lubricate as well. So I was out lubricating the hinges up so I could take the face off, and I was taking a look at some of these postage stamp capacitors, and I don't know if this is going to show up on camera, but they've started like oozing something. I know it's shaky, I'm sorry. And I know they weren't like this. Like, look at this one here. I know they weren't like this before I turned it on. This is a product of powering this thing up. Man, this thing needs all the capacitors. This thing, even these are like leaking something. They got moisture in them and it's boiling out. That's what happens when you power it up. After an hour of it running, the capacitors start to squirt their spooge. This one is definitely... yeah, it's very interesting. I didn't think there was anything in those. That's one of those postage stamp. They call them postage stamp or dominoes that have got the color code on them. Those are supposed to be mica, I thought. I guess not. I'm trying to get the knobs off this beauty. The channel selector knob is just... I've been using 2 pry bars and I cannot get it. It is so corroded. I'm going to try a heat gun and warm it up. Hopefully it'll come off. I'll tell you, sometimes on this old stuff you have just got to Clarko twinkulate. Getting a little messy here. I'm gonna WD-40 dump all over the ground. So let's go the other way. Oh boy. Come on, work it, Daddy. There we go. See this? This is how you get the job done. Look at it polishing those points. Now, even with all that joy, I cannot get this pot broken loose here. And I think this might have been... I think that one right there might have actually been the brightness. I think this might be the brightness. See, I thought this was fine-tuning when I was screwing with this, but apparently this doesn't... Yeah, I decided to use WD-40 instead of ATF. And it's still making an absolute mess here. But I think the tuner might have hope now. Oops. This is a professional touch right here. Jeez. This is what you call professional TV repair. So if that wasn't good enough, let's do this side here and get the more paper towel sucked into it. What you call how to clean a tuner. It's power, remote control power tuning. It's interesting, this one's missing. I believe that's channel 4. That's channel 3 that's missing. That's kind of interesting. I wonder, because we didn't use channel 3 here in LA. I wonder if that's I wonder if this was an LA set and they just left those out. This is bad. Oh, jeez. Love the build of that thing, though. I mean, this damn thing. Damn thing is. This pot is frozen solid. So I'm going through checking these pots as I clean them, and there's not a lot of hope here. This is the vertical hold, and I think this one's working good. So when you do this, look at the bar on the bottom. See the bar on the bottom of the bar at the bottom of the meter? I'm rotating it counterclockwise. So that one looks pretty damn good. It basically goes from 100K, which it is, to, well, it should go a lot less than 460 ohms, but that might be acceptable since it is a 100K pot. And that is the vertical hold. Now if I go to this one right here, which is vertical linearity, I marked these all yesterday. And they're using these as rheostats, not as potentiometers, which means they only have 2 of the 3 legs connected. So I'm going to turn this one. This is a very low resistance. So you can see right there we're at 19 ohms. Then I turn it just a little bit and it starts to go up. And there we're at 400 ohms. This is a 5K pot. And see right there it goes to 2 megs. When in reality it should be all the way one way should be 5K, all the way the other way should be about 0. So this one, vertical linearity, is very, very toasted. So maybe what that does, I believe, is that grounds the cathode of the vertical output tube. Maybe if I just leave it all the way up, we won't have very much adjustment range on the vertical linearity. Let me see, this one is vertical height. Let's see how this one is used as a potentiometer, not a rheostat. It's got all 3 So 26 ohms all the way counterclockwise. This one might be working. Yeah, that one looks like it's sort of working. I'm going to go from the center tap to the other. Now I'm going to go from here to here. So this would reverse what we just saw. So all the way clockwise is .33 ohms. Yeah, this one looks like it's working. This one looks like it's working. That is vertical height. Let me test the focus. The focus is this big heavy duty one over here, high wattage. Let's see. This one is used as a rheostat. My little grabber things are getting kind of worn out. Okay, 200 ohms. And adjusting it makes no difference. Well, that's not a good look. Well, there we go. Maybe I could get some spray, and that's a sealed pot. Let me try and work some lube into that. So I was able to pop the focus open. You can see it's a coil wire there, and that little thing rubs on it. So I'm going to spray that and work it. Hopefully we can get this one working again. And look at that. Smooth operator. You can see the WD-40 in there doing its thing, cleaning the crust. It's not often you have to scrape the crust off your vintage TV with a putty knife. This is exceptionally bad. Now I'm doing this because I want to label what these pots are and label if they're good or bad with paint. I've marked and tested all the controls. So we have tone, volume, contrast, brightness, and then on the bottom we have vertical linearity, and that red mark means that that pot is not working right. Vertical height, horizontal hold, vertical hold, and focus. So all of the pots have been checked. I also checked the vertical blocking transformer, which is right there, which is good, and the horizontal blocking transformer, which is good. We know it's good because the horizontal was working, the vertical was not. I noticed some cracked capacitors in the vertical. I have it set up here on the bench so I can work on it. I really want to get the vertical oscillator, vertical working before I go any further with it. I have a 500 watt, I don't know what this is, but it's a lot smaller and harder to break than the bigger bulb. So let's turn it on and see where it is from yesterday. Hopefully we get our line here. Okay, well here's what we get today. Isn't that exciting? Okay, I am going to turn the focus. Let's see what this does. Well, that seems like it sharpens it up. Okay, the vertical linearity was the bad. Let's try the brightness. This is a very... Okay, that actually works now. Try contrast. That does something. Vertical linearity was the bad pot. That's the cathode. Ooh, that's interesting. So if I rock that back and forth, which would make sense because the pot stops conducting. I'm going to ruin, I think I just ruined what was left of that pot. Basically, the pot would go open at a certain point, and that would be turning the cathode on and off. So that would sort of suggest that the yoke is working, the yoke and the vertical output. So basically what I'm doing there is grounding and ungrounding the vertical output tube. Okay. So did I ruin the pot? Okay. Does nothing. Does nothing. Okay, let's try and get into this vertical circuit. So if I measure the drop across this pot, 4 volts, turning it, and that's it, the pot goes open. If I go the other way, So that's what I was doing right there to get the picture to bounce. All right. Okay, let's do some voltage checks here. We want to check pin 5. It should be 0. We want to check pin 2 on this one. It should be 34 volts or 280. I guess 34 volts. So let's start with those two. Pin 5, which should be 0 because that 34 volts would be blocked by that 0.25. And let's check pin 2 on the oscillator. This, so the height should adjust pin 2. Okay, pin 2 is 29. Let me adjust the height. So we know that pot is working. Okay. So they want that at 32. Then we come across here to, oh boy, one of these. The 2.2 meg. This should be about 0. What the hell? 219. Wait a second, am I on the right standby? Okay, I wasn't on the right thing. So this should be 0, it's 28. Let me try adjusting the height on it. Oh boy. We have an extremely leaky bumblebee capacitor there. So the voltage is just leaking right through 509. Wow, that's horrible. I wonder if it's leaking through 308. Let's see, that's another one. It's got to be this one, which comes over to here. 33? Really? Adjusting the vertical height changes that too, but that's changing the bias on the tube. 33 volts here? Let me double check this. Because I only had 3 or 7 over here on this. Okay, this is correct. This is 33 volts right here. And it is 7 volts here with this pot, quote unquote, open. So either that pot is not going open or this electrolytic is shorted, or all of the above. But these two capacitors here are obviously shorted. Now that says 0.25 and 0.1. So these are... Let me turn this off while I figure out how to read this. This is brown, black, yellow, which would be 104, right? So that's 0.1. And this one here is the same thing, brown, black, yellow, so that's 104. Brown, black, yellow, 104. So I agree with that. So before I condemn the capacitor, I want to pull the tube out, because a leaky grid emissions on a tube will show a bad capacitor, and or make you think it's a bad capacitor. And it's interesting, it should really be 0 volts, but it is measuring 12. Okay, so on this one we've only got 0.7 of a volt leakage, but on the other one we have it's almost shorted, a full 40 volts. It was 12. I turned the vertical height up. See, I can turn this down. So the grid coupling capacitors shorted. This is a 6K6 vertical output. Kind of tired, but you know, we're also running a really low B plus there, but I don't think that would stop the oscillator from running. I still think with 200 volts it should almost run. Yeah, this tube is tired, but it's not going to stop it from working totally. This is the 6SL7 oscillator, and it is just measuring nothing. What am I doing wrong here? Because I think it was conducting. If I look at the schematic, wouldn't that voltage have been a lot higher on that plate? Maybe not. I could swear I would have noticed if it wasn't getting hot. What am I doing wrong here? Well, this is an interesting one. It's warm to the touch. I do not see the filament glowing at all. And it has zero emissions, zero leakage, zero anything. Is it gassy? Is it full of air? But why is the getter perfect? I guess I got to go dig up another 6SL7. And I'm checking the plate voltage with the tube out, and it's still the same. So maybe the tube is not conducting. Here's a different 6SL7. So that tube was definitely totally, it must have gone to air. I don't get it, because you can see this one glowing on the inside, and you could not see this one glowing, but it's getting hot. That is so bizarre. Or is this silver thing not a getter? I just put a capacitor, a 0.47 in series with this to get the DC off of the grid. This capacitor has a crack in it, as most of these do. Okay, I got the new 6SL7 in. I bet that's going to make a difference. I bet that will make a difference. Because this one, I don't know what's up with this. That silver must not be a getter. Come on, baby. Show me the goods. That's not good. I was expecting vertical deflection. It's the same exact crap. Really? Even with a good tube in there? Well, something starts to happen here if I connect my meter to a certain point. That's turning the vertical hold. It's turning the vertical height. The vertical linearity does nothing. I think we got a super leaky electrolytic here. Okay, this electrolytic here is hella leaky. 506. Because I got 100K feeding it. And yeah, 100K is a lot to feed an electrolytic that's even slightly leaky. But we're supposed to have 280 volts on that plate. So with that tube out, so on one side of the resistor we have 244, on the other side we have 114. So all that's being drained off by that electrolytic. The same thing with the cathode. It's that electrolytic right there. Super leaky. So check this out. I just cut the 2 leads off that capacitor. We're getting there. We have vertical deflection now. Keep in mind, we're still on a light bulb. We're still on the light bulb, and we still have bad filter capacitors, causing low B+. So we have vertical deflection. I replaced, I cut out 2 pins of that electrolytic. I still got the cathode one in there, the electrolytic on the cathode, which is leaky. And of course I installed that in the new tube. I'm going to try, I got a 6SN7 there. I'm going to try it in place of the 6SL7. I'm curious. The rest of this trash is just all filters. This thing needs every single capacitor changed. All of them. They're all bad. So 6SN7 being a lower mu tube definitely does have lower gain, but you can kind of crank it up a little bit higher, it looks like. Yeah, the 6SL7 is a high mu tube. I'm at the point here where I can take the chassis and just put it on the bench, and when I have free time, check the capacitors. Just cut each one out of circuit and test it with a capacitor tester. Hopefully there's a few good ones, but I don't know. I might break this video off as part 1 and then do part 2. This thing could take a lot to get it going. I mean, we got sort of a raster on it here, but that's just sort of. So anyway, maybe this is part 1 of the Philco 48-1001 Resurrection.